Okay, so I'm gonna do a quick video here, I think, to recap some things because um, I've learned some very important lessons today about the plastic tool. And I've been enamored of the plastic tool as a way to create mainly secondary animation. Um, but the deeper I go with the tool, the more flexible it seems to be. So what actually happened here was, first of all, let's just save all this and go in here. So I created this entire sequence from a single drawing that I just cut into 3 pieces and then rigged it up. I would say that if you're comfortable with the tools and you're sort of used to using them, the whole rigging process probably would take 5 to 10 minutes. I mean, it's really, really quick. And so I was using this to test the plastic tool. I also discovered that if I want to add secondary animation with the animate tool, if I put it in all mode, then I get this widget that allows me to do rotations and scaling and all the rest without having to come up here and click between the different options of the animate tool. So that's super cool. But that's the first thing that's super cool. Well, the second thing that's super cool is that my partner looked at this and realized that I had forgotten to draw the tendrils, if you want to call them that, in her hair. So I'm like, what do you do about that? Well, okay. Let's just see what happens if we go ahead and paint them in. Now, if you have a layer or a level that's being deformed by the plastic tool, then you cannot go in like this. If I hit the B key, it's going to not let me do it. If it's mesh deformed, you can't do it. However, you can go into the individual drawings and change it. So these ponytails or pigtails, tendrils, whatever you want to call them, were not here a little while ago. So I just went in with a simple brush and just painted them in. So this shows the procedural nature of OpenToons is really quite powerful, because by changing the drawings, the changes just propagated out to the main animation. Now, it's not perfect. You can see some strange deformation right there. Well, the reason it's not perfect, and I'm going to hit the X key so I can go into the edit mesh tool. The reason it's not perfect is because when I realized I had this issue, I literally went into the plastic tool and just stretched the mesh. I basically stretched it so that the pigtails were encompassed by the mesh that's being deformed by the plastic tool. So it wasn't a perfect solution. However, it was pretty close. So then the next thing I did was I realized that actually this action that I've animated, you know, in the process of testing out rigging and the plastic tool and all the rest, is in fact pretty much what I need next in the scene that I've been working on. I'm like, okay, well, what do we do? Well, it turns out if you take a scene like this with however many levels it has, in this case it looks like there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 levels, and you go into your other project, you can drag and drop the other scene into OpenToons, and by default, OpenToons will literally drag it into your scene as a subxheet. Now that's pretty useful. That's very useful, because that means that my scene ended here, and then boom, the corrections. Well, I shouldn't say the corrections. I'm thinking about 2 things at once here. The whole sequence that I was working on is now here in OpenToons. Now, if I have hotkeys set up to go down into the subxheet, and I'm going to take a look here at the mesh, and you'll see that the mesh now looks more proper. There's actually a mesh encompassing the braids or the pigtails. Well, why? because with the plastic tool, at any point in time, you can hit the create mesh button and just regenerate the mesh. So it regenerated it based on these new drawings. So now it actually put the appropriate mesh around the pigtails. Well, what about deformation in secondary animation? Well, what I then did was, again, animate tool, I went into the build skeleton mode, and what I did was I just added 2 more bones that go out to the end of these pigtails. Now, one thing that was important is I parented those new bones to the root. And the reason is because throughout this animation, the root never moved. And so therefore, if I wanted to just, actually, sorry, my bad. Let me go into animate mode now. That means that these bones that are controlling the pigtails are not being unduly influenced by any of the other bones because their immediate parent is the root, which never moved previously. So now, as you can see, we have a really simple way to move those tendrils around. And in doing so, I created this secondary animation. And I'm going to go ahead and jump up out of here so you can see the full sequence. So now, the tendrils kind of react appropriately, as you can see. And we've got this nice secondary animation. It literally took minutes to do. Very, very quick. And this is one of the cool things with OpenToonz and the plastic tool in particular, is that changes propagate pretty smartly, right? So that brings us to this point. Now there is a little bit of a problem here in the sense that this whole scene consists of essentially single frames, so it's like a motion animatic that's been sort of, I've been building up the detail. And by the way, I've also got the additional problem of these drawings right here. Ta-da! Her pigtails are still missing. So I've got a bunch of drawings that I need to go in and fix that. But the cool thing is the transition from here to here was relatively smooth. And even though this is a bit of a jump right there, you know, in the context of an anime, I don't think that's going to be too big of a jump at all. I mean, it goes by about that fast. You know, boom. So I think we're in good shape that way. But yeah, the next thing that happens in the scene is she kind of lays into Ninja 1 and chews him out for slicing the strap on her dress. So that brings us kind of up to date. A couple other things I've done today to make my life a little simpler was I assigned the X sheet, because I seem to keep popping open a large X sheet like that. So I went into my preferences and assigned that to F2. So for me, F2 opens an X sheet and F3 opens a schematic. And again, in my case, that's on 2 other screens that you can't see. But it's very convenient to have a really big screen showing both the X sheet and the schematic view. So the upshot of all of it is it makes it so that I can work pretty quickly. So that brings us up to now. And what I've been doing today is I finished up putting in these shadows, which, by the way, you can see the shadows bleed outside the lines. That doesn't matter because when it renders, those shadows will get clipped due to an effect that I added in the schematic. So with that, and by the way, that shadow doesn't belong, so we do have one motion line transition here. Okay, so she's got her pigtails there, but not here. So basically the problem begins basically here. Alright, well, let's deal with it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the brush. And by the way, I should point out another shortcut key that I did that's been extremely helpful, although I'm having to relearn to use it, which is that by default you hit the space bar to pan your scene around, and as you see, it's causing a magnifying glass, because for me that's no longer the case. I don't want to use the space bar to pan my scene because I always use my middle mouse button. So it's like I've found it a little obnoxious that I have to remember to hit Shift spacebar whenever I want to zoom in and out. So I just changed it in the preferences. Edit, well, actually configure shortcuts. And then I found zoom, and I just changed the zoom tool to be the space key. So now I can work a lot faster. You wouldn't think that would make that big of a difference, but it really does, because I'm sitting here moving quickly and I want to just hit the because if I'm using my mouse, I can just use the mouse wheel to zoom, but most of the time I'm using the stylus. So I'm hitting the middle mouse button to pan, and then I hit the space bar to zoom, and this ability to just kind of go like this by just hitting the space bar has proven to be quite quick. So anyway, here we go. We've got a little issue here. That's the wrong color. Where is it? It's right here. Akari hair. And it looks like that's interesting. Okay, so let's hit undo a couple times. It looks like that brush got changed. Frankly, for what I'm gonna do right here, I probably want this brush. Nope, that's gonna be too big. That's gonna be too big. Well, when in doubt, I think it's gonna be safer to use my trusty pencil. So, oh, I see. I've got the size set to 3. That's because of something I was doing earlier. So, basically, the question is that going to look okay? It's really not the greatest brush in the world for what I'm doing. Let me try this one. That's better. I need to get good clean lines. Okay. Whoops. Yeah, it's definitely going to be a temptation to move too quickly. Or I'm sorry, make the lines too big. Well, folks, as you know, I can't think and talk at the same time. You know, and honestly, this may require me to go in and add some more secondary animation here, there, and everywhere. We'll see. I mean, there are definitely going to be some additional in-betweens required in this scene. And that's fine. You know, it's just part of the process. Okay. I don't really want to do too much here. Okay, so here we have a real problem. And I may find out that this is going to be... I may change my mind on how I'm doing this. Let's hit the N key. Yeah, I mean, really, we probably do want to put some outlines around those. But that's okay. Let's just keep going. Okay, this is dangerous behavior. If it chatters a little bit, that's okay, because it is kind of like a secondary animation concept going on. That's too thick. Space bar. So yeah, you could argue that these lines should be sharper, harder, you might say. But excuse me, I'm gonna make this. Let's make this -2 and see if that helps. It does. That definitely helps. It makes it both harder and thinner. So that's cool. Okay, so now if she actually swung around that way, what would actually happen would be something like this. And for this really wide shot, we don't need to you know, worry about outlines or anything like that. These are going to have enough detail to give us the effect we're after. Okay, and right here, the doggone things are missing. So, got a little bit of a coincidence right there that I don't like. So let's do that one again and put them more straight vertically so that it's not just happening to bump into the ninja's leg like it was. I can't get too crazy with the painting, because if I wind up having to make a change, actually I don't like that one. If I wind up having to make a change, it's going to require me to erase everything because I'm actually painting right into the main layer at this point. Okay. Those doggone pigtails. Well, they're very important. They're definitely part of her, you know, defined look. I'm going to let that one go. Just a little indicator there. Now, I can't believe I forgot these. It's kind of stupid. But it's not altogether shocking. Okay, so now what I need to do is make sure that these two frames kind of get us to the next, okay, to the sub sheet. I'm going to have that actually drape over her hand. Okay, is it playing? I think it's okay. Yeah, I think that's all right. So wrong brush. The old OpenTunes curse of... Okay, so the only thing about this that is a little cumbersome is the fact that OpenTunes, I can't keep hitting the next frame button because the subx sheet is obviously a separate level, so they're not part of the same level, and the period and comma key only work within a level. So let's get this. Alright, there we did it. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, and actually the pigtails serve to sort of sew this whole sequence together, actually. That continuity of that secondary action right there helps make it all work, so very good. Alright, so if it loops... Now, one of the problems that exists now is that there's some timing baked into this sequence right here, whereas obviously the whole rest of the scene that's not part of the subx sheet is just flying by at 1 frame every minute. So nothing, or every second, wait, 24 frames a second. So nothing's been timed out yet, except this little subx sheet. And I don't even know what she's saying, but I know that she's sort of cussing him out for offending her personhood. Okay, so with that, I think we are looking pretty good. Yeah, and I think, I mean, at this point, there's really two things to do. One is what I've already started doing here, which is inserting the background images. And by the way, this little sequence here came out pretty well too. This was all just painted with the regular My Paint brushes in a plain old raster level. And what I did was I took this level, and if you render it, what you're going to see is that in the schematic, and we want to use the effects schematic, which means we flip it like this. Sorry, we were in the effects schematic. What I did was, wait a minute. Here we go. It is effects. I added a little bit of a blur, and then I added a layer blending add. Okay, so the difference between the effects that say INO and the ones that, you know, layer blending versus layer blending INO is layer blending INO assumes you're going to plug in two levels, and then there's you know, a mathematical blending mode applied to that, such as multiply or whatever. With the layer blending ones, you don't need a second level. It's going to go ahead and apply this level to the overall X sheet, in this case in add mode. And then the other thing I did was, actually I probably shouldn't have closed that. This is important. You can open up the effect and keyframe it. So what I did was I made the additive effect 10%, and then I added a keyframe here to change it to 50%, and then here 100%. So when it all goes by, it looks like that. Now this isn't perfect. Let me go ahead and roll that so that it sort of caches. And then I'm going to turn the frame rate back down to like 12 or maybe 8. Okay, I would say even less. Do 6. But you can see it's going to be a cool effect. I mean, you know, it's pretty close to what I had in mind. And so, again, everywhere in this sequence, there's a lot of timing that's still got to be planned and worked out. So, anyway, so I need to get the backgrounds inserted. That's what this is. And then this, other than maybe some post-production effects, that will be it for, well, and then lip sync. Lip sync with eyebrows. I'm kind of putting eyebrows and lip sync probably on the same level, but they're certainly going to be added last. Maybe on the same level, maybe not. But so let's just kind of keep going through this. Sorry about that. Boom. And I'm wondering why that... Oh, it's because of the preview range. I need to select this and go auto markers. Now it'll be able to continue going forward. And another thing that's probably worth noting is because it's nighttime, it's actually supposed to be tinted like that. And let's see what happens if we... Yeah, I don't want to do that. And in fact, I'm going to turn that background thing or that tint thing back off so I can see better. And this guy goes for it, and boom, he gets biffed. Boom, he gets kicked. This guy takes a swipe while this guy falls out the window. And now we're at the point where she's gonna essentially ream the guy for being some kind of a pervert. 24 frames a second there, folks. And that brings us up to date. So it's been a good day of figuring things out, and I'm increasingly impressed with the procedural nature of the workflow in OpenTunes. You know, I forgot her pigtail, but I can just draw it in there, and everything sort of just propagates upstream for you. So very, very good. Okay, so I'm pushing a half hour. I think that's it. I've already posted a quick tip. I think I posted a couple things today already, so I think that'll do it. And I think probably the next time I'm on, I'll be just cranking away at probably either backgrounds or maybe we'll be up to lip sync, but we shall see. So later for now.